You know, anyone that's ever achieved anything of any significance in this world has been completely unrealistic.
Yeah, and gone through a lot of pain.
And even if they fall short of that goal, the person that they become because of that commitment, tenacity and drive, they become a better person.
Yeah.
And that's better than being realistic.
Yeah. So here we are with Awesomeness with Cam Calhoun, and this morning I've got my very good friend David Niethe here. Dave, you're known as the Yoda of New Zealand sport in a way.
Thanks to Mike Hoskins for that one.
But really, you've been in the minds of some of our greatest athletes, business people. It's a real honour to have you here. Cheers, Awesomeness with Cam Calhoun.
I appreciate it, mate. I'm looking forward to this.
So,
we've been talking about this for a while to tee it up.
We have been. Well, I remember when we met, and
what was that? 3 years ago?
Down in Hawke's Bay, speaking at an event.
Yeah, that was for a whole lot of accountants.
Yeah, and you got them fired up, man.
Then I put them to sleep. You fired them up, mate. Yeah, no. Well, interesting bunch of people down there, eh?
But that energy that you bring into a room, it is electric. People are feeling it. People change from it. Has that always been a part of how you are?
I think I've always been... I think that's evolved over time. I mean, I think I've always been a really sort of slightly extroverted person. But, we were talking about how we got into all this and the history. Not initially, I think this is something that's evolved over a period of time. And it probably started more towards when I finished at Wesley College and got into... I didn't do particularly well at Wesley. I failed everything, so I haven't got any qualifications from school.
Because school wasn't your thing?
No, it wasn't my thing, mate. And I did struggle, and I didn't really understand why, because I don't know. I struggled with just the basics, maths, English, etc. The only subjects I really enjoyed was sport and art.
Okay.
So I had a bit of creative mind,
and I think they're two almost contrasting.
Yeah. So I mean, I had this creative part of me that it wasn't really developed because art was not really a prime sort of subject. But I left Wesley, and because I didn't have qualifications back in the day, because being a little bit older than you now, mate. If you were smart, you went to university. If you weren't, you'd try and get yourself an apprenticeship. So my old man pulled some strings and got me a trade. So I am a qualified web offset printer by trade.
Okay. By choice or?
No, not by choice. By necessity at that point, because I'm young. I'm very independent. So I wanted my own. I want to get out of home. I mean, I left home at sort of 13, and I became quite independent from then. So I never wanted to go back home. Yeah. And I'm a stubborn old bugger, a bit like my old man. So, he gave me a job so that I can get out of the house and go flatting with some mates. And we flatted in we flatted in this place out in the back of Manurewa called Clendon. Bit of tough area of town. Oh, mate, it was fantastic. Had some great guys that I flattered with there, and at that point, the only real passion I have, work was somewhere where I went to make money, but my passion was in the gym. I fell in love with the gym.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my time just working on myself there.
Was that inspired by something you'd seen, or?
Yeah, I think the best way to explain that was, you can imagine, a little skinny white boy at Wesley College, and the bullying was pretty tough. You had to harden up real quick.
Yeah.
And so for me, because I had a little bit of bullying, I knew that that wasn't me. I don't want this anymore. So the old, the picture of the guy kicking sand on the guy's face, Charles Atlas sort of things at the end of comics, etc. Blah blah blah. So that sort of motivated me that I had to make some changes physically. I wanted to get really big.
Mm-hmm.
that passion has continued for the last 35 years.
Awesome. And it's succeeded, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah, it has,
so
mate.
was that your first experience of having a dream? Is that kind of what, you know, if we go to your childhood dream,
Yeah.
do they fit together or?
No, I never really sort of imagined myself as a strongman. I think that the significant moment was at Wesley College when the priest there gave me a book called Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And that book really intrigued me because I could relate to this seagull, Jonathan, wanting to be the best version of himself. He wanted to be the fastest seagull ever. And it triggered something. And for me, it was like, what can I... You know, I was obsessed with getting massive. I wanted to be huge. You know what I mean? I wanted to be strong.
Yeah.
And it started on that. So, good mate of mine at college then, Neil Crombie, who was playing for the first 15, took me into the weight room. And I remember, geez, I don't think I even benched. I probably weighed about 78 kgs then. Probably benched no more than 60. But I fell in love with the iron game from that moment on.
But I mean, that's so powerful because it's you literally transformed yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's happening in a lot of people with big dreams. And a lot of people have these big dreams.
Yeah.
The issue is the execution. You know, how do you go from, yep, I believe it, I can see it, to actually making it happen?
And you know, that's I mean, isn't that the most important thing? You know, it's about that hard work over a quick period, over a long period of time, of absolute commitment. You know, it's sort of, what am I spent from ages of 16 to 28, I think I was, when I finished my last Strongman. But the amount of commitment, everything was committed to the gym.
And that's at a time when also I imagine being a weenie little kid saying, I want to be the strongest man in New Zealand.
Yeah,
I mean, not everyone was going, yeah, you can do it.
In fact, I can remember the moment I couldn't afford to go to the gym initially, and so I got some old weights in the boot of my old car. And I'm out the back of jury training one day, and there's a bunch of guys getting on the booze, and they go, Niethe, come and get on the booze, mate. I said, no, I'm training. Leave me alone. And they kept harping on. And then one of them said, oh, what are you training for? And then I just blurted it out. You know, one day I'm going to be the strongest man in the country. And they just cracked up laughing, going, what a dick, you know what I mean? And all these cans came flying over. I picked up all my stuff and left. But what was interesting, probably about, 10 years later, New Zealand's strongest man, and it was the first, was a truck pull. And I'd won the first event. Now, I never won the New Zealand Strongest Man, but I've led it.
Yeah.
But I got a phone call from that guy going, far out, Niethe. We all thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we're watching you on TV and you're leading New Zealand's Strongest Man. So, you know, I think it's so important. You know, one of the words that I throw out there is the word permission.
Yeah.
You know, give yourself permission to dream big, man.
And what does that look like, giving yourself permission? Because there's a lot of, it's easy to put their obstacles in the way. It's easy to go, oh, look, there's 20 people laughing at me on one guy, you know.
Yeah, but the thing is, I reframe, I talk about this with my athletes, you know, especially at the junior levels, they're transitioning. You know, reframe everything to serve you. So if people are giving you a hard time, use that as energy.
Yeah.
You know, I had on my journey, most of the comments were negative. Oh, you deluded, Niethe. You know, there's no way, mate. And then as you get to the point where you're competing at that level going, oh, you know, it's ironic because the first, I had absolutely no doubt. I knew you could do it.
Yeah.
Far out,
yeah.
man. I mean, it's
but everyone loves to support the champion much better,
right? Yeah. Where were you in the dark times? Where were you when it was tough? You know what I mean? And again, that's why one of the biggest sources of confidence that you can get is your support network. And without a doubt, the person that has made the biggest difference for me would be my wife.
Okay. She's been there since a bit early on?
Joe's amazing. I mean, she absolutely supports me in everything I do. 100%. Now, I got some dumb ideas, mate.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not a genius at all things, you know, and I've tried all sorts of different things. But she's 100%
that's part of the
committed.
process, right?
Yeah, you have to fail.
Yeah.
I mean, the key to success is massive failure. And I think this is the issue we have. When kids fail, you know, we've got to, what I always teach my kids is preserve the learnings, but dump the negative emotions.
Yeah.
You know, what did you learn from it? You learned how not to do it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I remember my first big bench press. I'm in the gym by myself, and I think I loaded up 100 Ks. Now, I don't know, this is stupid, you know what I mean? Because the old benches back in those days didn't have cages that you can catch you know? Well, I failed on it. And I remember rubbing it off my chest, rolling it down. All I could see was red and white.
Yeah.
And I remember dumping it. But I never felt like a sense of failure. I thought, oh, man, I could almost got that. And again, sometimes it's how you frame things up. You know, how some people go, I failed, this is so hard. Whereas I failed and I thought, oh, man, I'm so close.
Yeah.
You know, and so just reframing things like that can actually change the energy in an individual, which changes the passion, which pushes that drive to keep going hard.
And is this something that you now see in a lot of those top athletes that we're working with?
Oh,
so
mate,
they, you know, they see failure as a sign of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. They know, they totally understand that it's a numbers game. They totally understand that failure is a part of it. Now, where they're exceptionally good at is they can disassociate the emotions and look at it from a logical, physiological perspective and go, okay, in releasing the ball, if it's a net baller or the pass or the kick or whatever, or a bench press, technically, they're looking for those weak points. Then they'll go and program accordingly to build them up.
Yeah.
And that's... Whereas, you know, you have someone who's very subtle or very low self-esteem, low confidence, how they frame it up, this is too hard. I never get a chance to win. I never improve. And the language doesn't assist.
Language is everything, right? I mean,
well,
what
language,
we're telling...
Language combined with physiology is key. One of the things that we talk about with my athletes is, and this is from boxing, and the last thing the referee says to someone before they come out banging is protect yourself at all times. And that's what I want my clients to do. Protect yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Look at what the learning is, and like I said, dump the emotions.
Yeah.
Because if you can't protect your self-image, then you're building something on a house of cards.
And how do you take that learning when you are... potentially you've just experienced the worst day of your life, you know, or you're in the media eye and everyone's giving you bullshit on it. Or, yeah.
And, you know, isn't it interesting because you think about this, you know, the media are terrible sometimes. You know, someone makes a mistake or fails and they are all over them.
Yeah.
And, yeah, look, an athlete initially has to have some time out to process. But again, that's the wiring underlying that is that they have that tenacious resolve. You know, I'm upset, and you have every right to be because you may have spent 4 years prepping to get to Commonwealth Games or Olympic Games and you missed the spot by 1/10 of a second.
Yep.
Now, you have two ways of looking at it. That is it, quit, poor flipping me, or I'm so close. Next time, I'm on track.
Yeah.
That tenacious resolve is one of the most important components to being a success.
In whoever
in life,
we are.
Absolutely. Whether it's business, whether it's relationships, whether it's sport.
And you can learn that?
You can develop that over time through becoming more self-aware, yeah?
Okay. And you get more self-aware through putting yourself out there?
Well, I think you become more self-aware when you're taught on how to process stuff. Now, one of the most important things, like I said, protect yourself at all times. So if you were to fail on a bench press, for instance, you can see it as, what's the point? I've got no chance. You know what I mean? I'm always going to be weak.
Yeah.
Now, if that's your language, that's exactly what you're going to get in life.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's interesting where parents will be subtle with their children and, you know, it's all right, Johnny, blah, blah, blah. But you think about this, you know, think about how we learn to ride a bike.
Yeah. You fall
off,
graze your
right?
knees.
You're in pain.
Yeah.
You're in pain.
Yeah.
And the brain's going, hey, don't do that again because that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
But what do? We get back on the bike and we fall off again and we brace our elbow and, you know, we get back on again. And it's just crazy.
Yeah.
But eventually, most of us now can get onto a bike at any age. And within seconds, we'll be away riding it.
But is there also something there, and there's a point where we get to an age or we get to a perception of ourselves where we're more afraid to start trying? So, like, getting on a bike as a 5-year-old is expected, we're going to fall.
Yeah.
How do you still give yourself that strength if you're 25 and you're like, okay, I'm going to ride a bike for the first time?
I think that really comes down to the you're going to get some individuals. I mean, it's a bit like winter, mate. Some people in winter bitch and moan about the cold. Other people ski.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to your quote, and I read this yesterday, was perception is projection, right?
What you think is what you get.
Yeah. And when we had that phone call last week, we were speaking about people, they have a perception, they get into an industry. We spoke of coaching and every other coaching's the biggest growth in this world now.
Yeah.
And then, for whatever reason,
they had the highest failure rate.
Highest failure rate.
You know,
what's happening there?
I think it really comes down to the craft and the passion. You know, I think people have got to be really careful on how they get into certain industries. You know, there are certain industries or certain people out there that are motivated by money. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as it doesn't sort of harm others or the environment, etc. But I think when you think about people are looking for a quick way to make good money, but mate, the coaching is a craft.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, I think the most important thing for any coach to be an exceptional coach is that they must be congruent. You know, you get a lot of people that say one thing and behind the scenes, they're completely different. It's a bullshit. It's a whole lot of false perception. You know what I mean?
Right.
For me, well, you know me for
and
years
because
now,
people see that, right?
Yeah, but people see people pick up on that in time. Do you know what I mean? Like I said, you know, I've been doing this 25 years. Cam, I've seen people come and go. But I love the whole thing. I just posted recently a young girl called Tupou who is at the Paralympias World Champs over in the UK. And T and I have been working together now probably 3 or 4 years, probably closer to 5 now. And as I posted, it's not about the medal. It's about the emotion for me. Having seen that young girl burst into tears as she stepped up to get her silver medal, that means the world to me because I know what she's gone through to get that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the buzz that I get. It's about helping people achieve their potential. Not everyone's going to be a world champion. But seeing them go on this path where they change and become self-confident young individuals, that for me that's the craft. That's the buzz I get.
And these people have that passion as well. I mean, that's kind of what we were saying in terms of not everyone becoming a coach. They have an idea, but don't become it because there's something missing in here. These athletes where you're talking about, that emotion is there because it's in that heart, maybe before it's in the mind, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing because you can see. I really enjoy the diversity of coaching too. You know, I get all sorts. I get the older people right through to the younger ones. And that what you just mentioned before, you know, I can have that in a 65-year-old. You know, it's just so refreshing to see. What's wonderful for me is that I get to deal with people like that day in and day out.
Yeah. and helping them to find that passion.
Yeah, and to unlock any sort of limiting beliefs. Sometimes, the first rule of war is never ever fight on two fronts. And, we've got some very quality competition out there. Now, if we're fighting internally, we're fighting on two fronts. So, I want my
internally, with ourselves.
I doubt myself.
Yep.
There's a war going on there. Then you're still going up those expectations to get on the track and run 100 metres in under 10 seconds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, if that's the situation, then we need to tidy things up to free your mind so that you can put yourself into that ultimate state where you're fearless.
And is that process to free up your mind?
Yeah.
Is it like a 5-step that everyone can follow, or is it really unique for each individual?
I found over the years, every person has a different way. Do you know what I mean? I think there's some basic steps. I'd talk about 3 steps to greatness.
Okay.
Number 1 is the ability of the individual to calm the mind down.
Yeah.
Because you don't make good decisions when you're under stress.
Yeah.
And if you're under stress, you're already knackering yourself out, right?
Yeah.
The next is what state helps assist in allowing me to then make that transition into alter ego. So I talk about calm, then happy, then Superman, Superwoman. And I think a prime example of that would possibly, interestingly enough, I just posted today, it's been 2 years since Israel won his first major UFC title. And Izzy has to be one of the most intelligent guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
But we worked a lot on his confidence, and then ultimately, once we got him confident, we transitioned that into his alter ego.
Yeah.
And in that ring, mate, he will never fight against Israel. You're fighting against Stylebender.
Yeah.
And that guy is
Stylebender. So that's his alter ego.
That guy has unlimited power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? For me, when I was competing, I never competed as me. I always competed as a 1,000 kg raging bloody bull.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which of the two would you rather face?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Well, you became that raging bull. But, and so all the athletes, all the business people you work with, they've all got that. So
well, some, if that's necessary for their particular individual needs, some not. You know what I mean? Like I said, you've got to have a certain amount of flexibility.
Yeah.
Within the coaching. I think the last thing you want to do is get into the situation of cut and paste.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of coaches go. And that's
where a lot of coaches can go, right?
Yep. I have no idea what I'm doing with my clients.
Yeah.
I have an intuitive process.
Yeah.
People say to me, what's going to happen on the second or third? I have no idea.
Yeah, and so that's real interesting because I often get asked about coaching, in terms of what coaching have I had. How do you know when to change a coach? Because there's a point where an athlete, a speaker, whoever will outgrow their coach.
Yeah.
Not for any disrespect to the coach, but just because
it's a credit to the coach.
It's a credit to the coach. However, I suspect when you go into it with the mentality that you have, where you are growing with your athlete, with your businesses, there's possibly a longer relationship happening there.
Mate, I think...
Because, like you said, you haven't got a 10-step process.
No.
We're going to get there and now, oh, shucks, what am I going to do?
Yeah, well, just before we were sitting here, before we came in, I had Trent Thorpe contact me, so he's back in the country. Now, he's one of our top triathletes.
Yeah.
Now, I've been working with him for years, but sometimes we don't see each other for a year.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He'll come for what I call a psychological warrant of fitness.
Yeah.
So we have an action reflection process. He'll come in and go, hey, look, because when racings are going well, at the end of the day, my job is to make myself redundant, ideally,
Yeah.
But athletes are athletes, you know what I mean? And we all kind of need that sort of person we can hold to account too, in a mental sense. So, I'll sit down and we'll debrief and we'll go over a few things. And sometimes it's not so much about reinventing the wheel as it is to reinforce the quality of the commitment to the strategies that we have talked about.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's holding them to account because they sometimes forget.
Yeah.
Or they get...
Because things get in the way.
Yeah, exactly. Life gets in the way, you know?
Yeah. So at what point in your life did you realise that this was your niche? Like, this is something that grew me, developed me, and now, holy heck, I can make a difference in the world.
Well, it started because I think it made such a difference for me. Now, you know, I was a relatively confident guy, but I remember I was, like I said, and it started with that book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and then a lot triggered for me, without a doubt, when I met my wife.
Yeah.
Because when I met my wife, ironically, across the road, so my wife was into gardening, across the road was a guy called Clive Litton, who, we're going back a long time, was one of the pioneers of sort of coaching here in New Zealand. And so she had a conversation, and she came over and said, look, you know, Clive's really interesting. He does a lot of mental stuff. And I went, far out, that sounds awesome. And he said, well, I'm actually doing coaching. So I'm going to put a coaching program together. Now, this is when no one even knew what coaching was, man.
Yeah, no.
I mean, this is going back to 1996, something like that. I mean, coaching wasn't even a word or an industry then. And so I sat down with Clive, and he started the ball rolling from there. You know, when we talked about the student outgrows the
coach.
I went on and I did a multitude of courses. Mate, I'll tell you something else.
So you decided I'm going to start investing in myself.
Well, I made a promise to myself. Now, I'm a very competitive person. I made it pretty clear to myself that I didn't want to be a coach. I wanted to be the coach.
Yeah.
Because I think that's responsible.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be working with athletes that want to be the best in the world, if I haven't got the same mentality, I have no right to be sitting down telling them how to suck eggs.
So when you say the coach, at what point, where does your border, is it within Auckland, within New Zealand, within the world?
Worldwide. I've got clients around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is...
But that's because that's what you told yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Perception is projection, right? So... it started with the life coaching, but it started triggering. There was a few athletes that I started working with. One in particular, Jamie Cooper, who is the golf pro up at Chamberlain, exceptionally a talented guy and a great coach. So he came and saw me and said, "Look, Dave, I'm really keen on winning the Order of Merit." And I, at that point, then was losing weight. Because I bloomed, I finished Strongman, so I'm starting the business, and I'm not exercising like I used to be, right? So I'm at like 168 kgs, and so I started walking because I'm not really designed for running, obviously. Then I thought, well, look, how do I make a walk competitive? Well, play golf. So off I went. So we had a mutual little, hey, I'll coach you, you coach me.
Cool.
Perfect. So I got, so that year, Jamie Cooper won the Order of Merit. He got me down, I think, to a single handicap.
Wow.
So I played golf for a little period of time. But it's one of those things where it served its purpose, but the mongrel's still in the boy here. You know what I mean? I still miss my iron game. And so, I had to, I couldn't be distracted. I needed to build the business. And as that evolved from coaching and working with that, it started to go into athletes. And when I found the work that I could do with athletes, because of my background in sport and my passion for it, I gelled. And I found my niche was in sport.
And when you get your niche, how do you let people know you're available? You know, how did the Lydia find you? How did New Zealand Breakers find you?
It was all word of mouth. You know, at this point, I try not to advertise too much because I've already got a waiting list, and that can be, it's a good thing and a bad thing.
But you don't give a waiting list for just
you get it through results, mate. No, listen, my whole business, I mean, I have a very simple website that's only just been constructed the last couple of years. All my business is referral.
Yeah.
So if you work with people and you get a result, people talk. All my business is referral.
Totally. What do we need in this world in order for people to be achieving more? What's your perception on achievement in the world?
Well, I think first and foremost, you've got to be clear on what it is that you want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which comes out of that passion.
Yeah, and so, you look at any individual, it could be a swimmer, for instance. Now, for me, I've always encouraged my athletes to be completely unrealistic. In terms of what they can achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. You can train.
I really get titchy about this, because I've even had I had an argument. Well, no, not an argument. I had a very heated conversation with an individual who's very high up in a certain industry. And his thoughts were, you've got to keep it realistic because you're setting people up for disappointment. And I said, well, I can understand that to a certain point. But imagine if you had a kid who wanted to ride a bike and he fell off twice and hurt himself, and you stopped putting him back on the bike.
Yeah.
Are you doing a service for that child? You're not.
No.
Anyone that's ever achieved anything of any significance in this world has been completely unrealistic.
Yeah, and gone through a lot of pain.
And even if they fall short of that goal, the person that they become because of that commitment, tenacity, and drive, they become a better person.
Yeah.
And that's better than being realistic.
Yeah.
I was going to swear that.
Yeah. but you can pull it off. But you're right. It is our challenges, our hunger, that desire to want to succeed.
And I think also for me, when you think about what are the things that stimulate that sort of mentality, the two things, without a doubt, the two gentlemen in my life that really influenced that was my granddad and my Uncle John.
Yeah.
Now, as a kid, my Uncle John would go and stay at his place, and he'd have his. They both served in the Second World War.
Yeah.
One granddad in the Air Force, Uncle John, with the tank commander in North Africa. And so, you get their gun, the re-Enfields, and pretending to shoot people and all that. I was really obsessed with it. I loved it.
Yeah.
And every kid at my age had a gun. You go out and play war and whatever.
Yep.
But what was interesting for me is, talking to these guys over a period of time, and as they got closer and closer towards the end of their lives, suddenly the stories changed, and the horrific stories, because these guys had suppressed all this crap for so many years, and I still having memories of Granddad breaking down and talking about having to identify his brother's body, who was a fighter pilot. Uncle John talking about his mate who was basically burnt alive in the tank when he was talking to him on the radio, and the whole thing got hit. And these horrific stories.
Yeah.
Now, from that, I made a promise to myself, out of respect to the men and women that gave their lives, every single person has a responsibility to be the best we can be and all we can be.
Yeah.
Now, if we all had that mentality, how much better could this whole world be?
Totally.
You know what I mean?
And it goes back to giving yourself permission.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, do you think the stories changed because they weren't giving themselves permission to tell those stories?
Yeah, I think it was. It was a cultural thing. I think.
Yeah.
Stiff upper lip, old chap. You don't talk about that crap.
Yeah.
We're getting on with life, and I can understand to a certain point why, because it was horrific.
Yeah. But how enriching was it to share that, to hear that?
You got to appreciate, these are my idols. These are my heroes. And when you see them break down in tears, you realise they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's a shocking thing, but also very moving, because I'm proud of them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And it's real.
Oh, it's real, man. And again, ultimately what it comes down to, if you break it down, it's about pain.
Yeah.
You push through pain, whether it's mental, physical.
No pain, no gain, right?
It's the bottom line.
It sounds old school and tough,
but it's the truth.
That's pain from every aspect of the word.
Pain means new life.
Yeah.
If you preserve the learnings from there and are committed to moving forward, you can create something wonderful. I mean,
We
for
do.
me, I started this business, and as a print, I used to get excited about overtime.
Yeah.
What a sad life that is.
Yeah.
And here I am now. For the last 25 years, Cam, I've done a 16-hour week.
Yeah. And changed hundreds, thousands, millions of lives.
I just love it, man.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, eh?
That's cool. And
It's having that balance. Like I said, it's been a coach who's congruent.
yeah.
I go to the gym, I work hard.
Yeah.
I'll challenge anyone half my age, come and train.
Yeah.
I will push the limits.
But you're showing those you work with what it
Yeah.
takes.
Yeah.
And through that you achieve more.
Hard
and,
work, tenacity,
Yeah.
clear vision, and a drive.
Yeah.
And, basically, everyone says to me, what do I need to be a success? You know what the secret is? 100 trillion cells.
100 trillion cells.
Yeah.
Can
What are
you
we all
just-
made up of?
Yeah.
Right? You've got
Ash.
everything you need right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Magic,
Awesome. It is magic, and thanks so much for that. Time just flew by, but thanks for coming in. I just
It's a
finished
pleasure,
off
mate.
with a little bit of a quick fire.
Yeah, man.
We'll take a couple of minutes and then we'll be done. So the first one, and I've heard you speak about finding your bliss.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, ultimately, this is about life by design, not life by default. So what is your bliss? I mean, my bliss is going to the gym. My bliss is having a quiet coffee or lunch with my wife. It's having that time with my kids, time with friends, and not stressed.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not motivated so much by money,
Yeah.
but what I do want in my life, for me, my bliss is in time.
Yeah.
Time with my family, time for myself.
Yeah.
I like to recharge. I like to snooze.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's where you become a best of yourself.
Yeah.
How do you take there's a lot of inspiration around us all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time.
Yep.
Books, papers, you
Yep.
could read it on the
Yep.
back of a bus. How do you make that into motivation? Because my understanding of inspiration is that's what we're given. Motivation is what we decide to move.
Yeah, motivation is short-term works.
Yep.
I think the most important thing is developing those behaviours so that you build the most important thing. We start with motivation, but ultimately I want to create momentum.
Yep.
And when we start developing habitual behaviours, that's when you start building momentum.
Yep.
Hold on for the ride then.
Yeah.
Habits for success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is about holding on, right?
Yeah, mate.
Coach.
Because honestly, if you truly are committed to all these things, incredible things start to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And believe me, enjoy the ride.
Yeah. If someone gave you if someone got given $100,
Yep.
what would you suggest you go out and do with it?
Buy a book.
What book would you buy?
Mate, there's so many bloody books out
Yeah.
there.
Find something that speaks to you, right?
Yeah. Look, I think the most important thing is, a gentleman called Jim Rohn. Now, he's old school motivator, back in
Yeah.
the day, still alive today, and he's a wonderful man. 3 steps to greatness. Number 1, set goals. 2, educate yourself. And 3, have a financial plan. Education, mate, I tell you, the biggest buzz of my life was getting my library card.
Yeah.
We didn't have the
Unlimited
internet.
potential at that point.
Oh, mate, I was never... I always stayed away from the library when I was at school. Then I fell in love with the place.
Awesome.
Books and reading, man.
Awesome. Well, David, you dream big, you achieve more. Thanks so much for coming in, sharing that wisdom, sharing your awesomeness. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
man.
mate. And
Cheers.
you are too, Cam. I really appreciate you giving me your time, mate.
Anytime. We've got a big world out there, so let's go out there and
Let's go
make
and
it
kick
as
some
awesome
butt.
as we can.
Okay,
Kick
bro.
ass.
Thank you, mate.
Cool.